Hey everyone, welcome to Wednestopia, the day comic books come out. Really DC heavy week for me this week. I actually think I had 5 books from DC, only 1 book from Image, and that was it. So I decided to get an additional book this week just to kind of change things up, try something new. A lot of issue 1s this week. There was Magneto, Moon Knight, there was something from Boom Studios. I ended up picking up The Auteur, which is from Oni Press. It is written by Rick Spears and illustrated by James Callahan. And the reason I went with The Auteur as the extra book I picked up this week is because I actually took a class when I was getting my undergraduate degree in literature and language on, I think it was called Hollywood on Film, but it was kind of just about Hollywood genre, whether it was a book or a movie or what have you, basically just Hollywood fiction and some of the tropes of Hollywood fiction, and just kind of gathering all those different stories up and really examining like what that genre kind of looks like. And so I thought it would be really fun to kind of take a look at what they would do with it in comics. Obviously, I mean, it's been played up as being very satirical and completely over the top. You can tell from the cover of the book alone that it's, you know, the illustration is absolutely just completely off the wall and just completely crazy. As you get into the book, there are some ridiculous sort of double-page spreads that are incredibly gory, but they're also just cartoony enough that it just makes you laugh more than anything. Like, there's a picture of Abraham Lincoln cutting off the main character's head with an axe. It actually happens a couple of times in the book, but especially the first shot where basically it's just kind of cleaving into his head. Just all the little minute details in the way James Callahan illustrates it just gives it that cartoony edge and just makes it, it's like so, there's so many details it becomes completely sort of anti-realistic looking. It was a kind of a treat to read. What I do recommend, if you do pick up The Auteur, is whatever you do, don't read the little blurb at the end by the editor, who I'm not sure who the editor of the book was, but he goes on this whole big tirade about how this book is super original and how it's like all these amazing things and how nothing else really holds up water to something that's really truly original like this book, and it'll really annoy you and it'll make you not want to enjoy the book. I made the mistake of reading it first, and it took me about a half hour to really like go back into the book at all, much less you know, read it and potentially enjoy it. Once I did, and I just kind of forgot about what that editor had kind of said, the book became a lot of fun to read, actually. It's very tongue-in-cheek. Like I said, extremely gory, but in a way that's very cartoony. And the main character is absolutely crazy. I'm really curious to hear what happens next and find out where this crazy story is headed. So, The Auteur, I'm excited to pick that up again next month. Before digging into the DC books, I figure I'll get the Image title out of the way really quick. It's a hard book for me to really review, and it's because it has been such an ongoing story for issue after issue with absolutely no breaking point. It's one of those books that I almost wonder if you should read it in trade, but the story has been so continuous that even from trade to trade, it's going to feel like you're just kind of cutting things off and not really finishing things up. Like I can't picture how it would collect until you just read one big giant omnibus of that book. And the Image book I'm talking about is Revival. So, what can I say about Revival that hasn't been said? I mean, Tim Seeley is writing a really interesting story. You know, it's not about vampires, it's not about zombies, it's about the undead as real people and what that looks like in society. We're getting into a lot of the nuts and bolts of the story now, which is really exciting. You know, we're trying to figure out basically who killed Dana's sister. That seems to be like, I mean, there's so many storylines going on in this book, but that seems to be kind of one of the main stories. One of the main stories. And over the last several issues, we've been kind of building up to, you know, a major confrontation between her and her English professor, and we find out that he's basically a red herring, and he dies at the end of the last issue. And now we're kind of on to the next thing, and we have the guy who you see on the cover of issue number 18 that came out this week, which is basically this burned misshapen figure who wears a hood. We don't know who this guy is yet. However, we do get a glimpse into his origin, which was alluded to earlier in this series, but it's one of those many, many moments of the series where, you know, a throwaway few pages, you know, several issues ago will suddenly come cropping back up. And that's why I think it's so hard to judge this book issue by issue, because it is really part of one very big cohesive whole. Now, I could talk about, you know, the storyline going on with Dana's son and his dealing with these sort of revival ghost figures. I could go on and on about M and her story about how, you know, she seems to be kind of falling apart and she's, you know, bleeding out of everywhere and all these terrible things are going on. I could talk about what's going on with the reporter and her storyline, or the English teacher's former wife, or Dana's dad, or any number of things, but that's just it. Like, if I were to go into every aspect of this book, this review would be an hour long just for Revival. The one additional thing I really do want to say about the book is just how great the ending of this book was. Like, a lot of really great character moments throughout, but at the end, basically, you have Dana, who is kind of at her breaking point because her son's been having all these nightmares. She can't get any sleep. She snaps on her son. She goes into his bed to apologize. She lays down with him, and her son says some things. And it's only, you know, 3 or 4 lines. But it's basically like, you know, I don't know this, but I know this, and I know this, and I know ultimately, spoilers, I know that you can't protect me. And it's an incredibly disheartening moment, because the fact of the matter is, you know it's true, and you feel Dana's helplessness, you feel Cooper's helplessness, and you're just with them, with all the things going on in the book, and all the confusion, and everything you're trying to figure out. You just have this moment between the two of them that, you know, it's not heartwarming at all, but you really feel for them, and you really understand the gravity of the situation just in those few little panels. And it's moments like that that keep you coming back to the book, because there's no climax here. You know, from issue to issue, you know, like I said, it just goes on and on and on, and there's no moment, there's no break in the action. We've been in the rising action for 18 issues. We're continuing the rising action, and there's no big jump out moments, no big climactic at the end of any particular issue. It just kind of keeps going. But those little moments, always towards the end of the book, just keep you coming back for more, no matter what. I wonder how long that this book is going to go on for. I don't know if there's, like, I haven't done any research outside of just reading the comics, so I don't know if there, you know, is a set number of issues they kind of have planned, what their ultimate end goal is, or if this is something that's going to kind of just go on and go on before they kind of somehow find a way to put all of the different loose ends to bed. But always, whether, you know, it goes on for 30 issues or it goes on for 100 issues, at least so far, this book has been consistently entertaining to read. Definitely a mind bender, and definitely one you should be picking up. So if you didn't pick up Revival 18, go pick it up, but make sure you pick up 1 through 17 first. Now, moving on to the DC books, I've kind of ordered these from least favorite to most favorite, just because there was kind of a broad range of quality in DC's books this week. The first book I'm going to read was definitely the most disappointing, although maybe disappointing is the wrong word, because I wasn't expecting a lot from it, but it didn't deliver much either, so we'll just go with the word disappointing. And that was Batman Detective Comics 29. This was a series that I was really excited for. I thought the idea of Gothtopia was really cool. I didn't know at the time that it was only going to be 3 issues long, and it felt 3 issues long, in the sense that, you know, you have so this big opening where you get to see the Gothtopia and what that's like, and you get to see all these sort of different versions of our favorite Bat characters, and then within a few pages we know that the whole thing is a lie, we know why it's a lie, we know who's behind it, we know what has to happen next. And, you know, in the middle issue we kind of have a few different bumps along the road before here we get our climax. Really very by the numbers story. Not a lot to say here in terms of big revelations about Batman or about the Bat universe. The big complaint I have about this issue in particular, but all of the issues of Gothtopia, is that Batman was always kind of a step ahead. And, you know, in this book, there was really no tension because you felt like Batman was kind of all over the situation. You really weren't worried about it. I mean, the story is told from Batman's perspective, but if you read it, it's kind of told from the perspective of Batman after he's already won, and he's explaining how he did it. So, you know, again, it's just there's no tension there. There's no real reason to fret about whether Batman will, you know, bring about the safety of Gotham citizens this week, or if he'll fail miserably, like we are certain that he would have otherwise. So yeah, I mean, and that was the big problem with Gothtopia overall. Like, you were kind of a step ahead of the story all the way through because they let the cat out of the bag too early, and then once the cat was out of the bag, Batman was kind of on top of the situation. There's never any real danger. So I'm glad that this story is over. Disappointed that it was as bad as it was, and I'm excited for the new team coming on next month. We get the Flash team, I believe, with issue 30. So that'll be interesting. Not sure what it's going to be like, but I'm definitely ready for a change because John Layman's run, unfortunately, it was okay, but it wasn't really anything special. The next book I have to review for you guys is very much on the chopping block right now, and that is none other than Green Lantern 29. This is a book that, you know, I would have expected to be at the very bottom of my list, and it wasn't this week, so props to them for being a little bit better than Detective Comics. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. One of my big complaints I've had about this book, and I did a whole video where I talked about it and ranted and raved for a while. Not my best video because it was mostly just me complaining, but take it for what it is. I'm not happy with the series right now. But the biggest complaint I've had that they actually did address this time around was really understanding that, hey, you know, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, really stinks as the leader, and he's making just stupid mistakes, stupid decisions, and it doesn't seem like they're really taking seriously the fact that that he needs to own up to those things, those mistakes that he's making, and really take responsibility. In this issue, he actually does. He sits everyone down and says, "Look, I suck. I know it. Here are the things I'm going to do that are going to make me better and make me a better leader for you guys." And he kind of gets the team back on his side. So that was nice. It still hasn't really addressed the bigger problem, which is, you know, people are rising up against the Green Lanterns because they are using a power that's going to destroy the universe if they're not careful. And, you know, no matter how nice of a speech Hal Jordan is going to give, like, that's still going to be true at the end of the day. So they haven't written themselves out of that yet, but at least Hal Jordan took out some ounce of his responsibility of this issue, which was really the thing that was making me absolutely tear my hair out about the series so far since Robert Venditti's been on board. One revelation I kind of had about the series as a whole, and my big problem with, in terms of, you know, it's true, the Green Lanterns are basically tyrants right now. And as I said, everyone is very justified in kind of rising up against the Green Lanterns. And I kind of blame that square on Robert Venditti when I did my Green Lantern video. I don't know if I explicitly did, but it was kind of implicit in my argument. And I have to say, it really kind of goes back more to Jeff Johns. As interesting as it was that, you know, having the little blue men turn out to be evil and be crazy lunatics, once you remove them from the equation, you're left with basically people and ordinary aliens running the show, and no one has appointed them to that position, and automatically you just automatically will perceive them as a tyrannical people, whether there was this whole big lights out event or not. Like, ultimately, that's kind of a problem with the whole idea of Green Lantern. And at least when they had the little green men, it's like they were sort of, you know, a whole nother level of being. They were like something that was above everybody else. They were written as, you know, sort of, I don't want to say godlike, but, you know, again, they're kind of on this whole other dimension, working on this whole other level. So it kind of gives Green Lanterns a pass. When you remove that and you have basically them just deciding to police the universe on their own and not being very good at it on top of that, they just come off as total hypocrites. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like I said, I would like Kyle Rayner to come back as some kind of super being and lead the Green Lanterns, or we get the old Guardians back to, not the old ones, but the new old ones, the ones that are actually good but are part of the old regime. You'll get those guys back basically to run the show, something to bring things a bit more back to normal. And let's get back to Earth. This book did have some stuff on Earth, and basically it was Green Lantern saying, hey, guess what, I'm not going to be here for the rest of the series because now this is run by the Red Lanterns, which was not enough. It felt nice to see Green Lantern grounded in a real place for a change. As much as I like the space opera and the ridiculous space battles, I want to see Earth threatened. I want to see that stake involved once in a while. And it's been basically since the Sinestro Corps War before Earth was in any kind of danger. And Hal Jordan says explicitly in this issue, you know, don't worry, humans, you are in no danger whatsoever because everything we're doing has nothing to do with you whatsoever. So, yeah, long story short, still a pretty lackluster issue, but at least they address some of my concerns. I'm still on board for now. Hopefully in the next few issues they'll address a few more of my concerns, and maybe we can get back to some semblance of the Green Lantern that we know and love. The next book on my list is technically the middle-of-the-road book because it's the third of 5 books they got from DC this week. It's only that because the 2 books after this book were just a little bit better. These last 3 books I have to review, I very much recommend. I really enjoyed them thoroughly. This book is much better than Detective Comics or much better than Green Lantern, and that's Green Arrow 29. We're on issue 4 now of the Outsider War, and this is a harder book to review because, you know, we've gotten all of the sort of drama out of the way. Well, I shouldn't say all the drama out of the way, but all of the sort of different pieces are where they need to be, and now we're starting to see things play out. Green Arrow has come to Prague. He's going to try and confront Komodo, and meanwhile Komodo has taken over the Outsiders, and he has this plan to you know, do all these terrible things like usual evil leagues do. And we just kind of see them kind of face off. We get the return of Green Arrow and Komodo on the same page, which hasn't happened in a while. And then we do get the big revelation for the daughter, who I can't remember her name, but basically, you know, she finds out that, yes, Green Arrow is her brother, and she's clearly torn. But nothing really plays out from that. We really just, you know, have the seed planted, and we know that that will obviously develop in the next few issues. The big standout moment more than anything in this particular book is actually the ending, and I am going to spoil it because I don't really know how to talk about it without spoiling it, and that is, spoilers, Green Arrow gets literally shot in the head. And I mean, there is an arrow, you see him laying on the ground with an arrow coming out of both sides of his head, which is like, you know he's not dead, because in comics, like, you would build up to that moment over the course of, like, 20 issues, and there'd be a big hoopla, and then you get the book and be like, oh my god, he's dead, as if I didn't know that was about to happen. This happens so abruptly at the end, you're just kind of like, you're just kind of taken aback and wonder what's happened. This book definitely gets props for being, like, the most off-the-wall ending to an issue this week, for me anyway. I'm curious to see how they're going to get out of it. I have no idea how that's going to pan out. Who knows, maybe he really is dead, but I sincerely doubt it. So only 2 books left. Penultimate issue this week was Action Comics issue number 29. I've really been liking this series since Greg Pak and Aaron Kuder came on board. I think Aaron Kuder's art is amazing. Like, it fits the Man of Steel really well. He was on New Guardians before that, I believe. I think that's where I saw him last. And it was such a waste to see him on that book, because it was a book I didn't care at all about, but I remember thinking that the art really had that kind of a little bit of a Frank Quitely, a little bit of a Chris Burnham kind of style to it, but again, still also being its own thing. And I think that it really fits the Man of Steel very well in Action Comics, and definitely fits the story that Greg Pak has been telling, which is basically Lana Lang trying to get this energy source out of the underground that turns out to be part of this underground civilization. They're all monsters and all this craziness going on. We're on to the second to last issue of this story arc, I believe, where basically Superman basically saves the dinosaur-like things from the Ghost Warrior, whatever his name is. Sorry, I don't really know the names of the things in this book very well right now, obviously. But basically, he saves the day for the dinosaurs, and then he goes off to face the people who are giving the Ghost Warrior guy his marching orders. And pretty decent issue overall. The thing I'm really liking about Action Comics right now is it feels like this Superman cares about something. We've been so busy having dark, brooding Man of Steel that we're forgetting the thing that makes Superman great, which is that he is an all-powerful being that can do anything. But if you're a good writer, you can put him in situations that puts him at odds. I mean, he has to decide to stand up for these hideous monsters who would kill his best friend. But Superman, it's not that Superman has super strength, but he also has super compassion. He can see that this giant monster is not what he seems, and he can stick up for that giant monster. And it's important to remember that Superman is an alien, and it makes sense that he would be able to find those sympathetic ties even with crazy giant monsters, because he himself is kind of a monster. And it's cool to see that play out. For a while, it was really starting to feel like Superman was kind of a xenophobe, really. I mean, if you really play it up with some of the stories that they've told in recent years, he stands up for men and women, and they live in America, and that's about it. Like, he doesn't care about other beings, and he doesn't have sympathy for monsters because he just wants to punch them in the face. This is a series that plays against that. He reminds me a lot more of Captain Picard on The Next Generation, where they live in this utopic society, and they have the Prime Directive, and they live by the Prime Directive, but by its nature, by the nature of the cosmos, it's normal for the Prime Directive and what the most obvious thing and simple, sort of most obviously correct thing to do, how those don't actually align a lot of the times, and you have to find the middle ground between the two, or you have to find a way to uphold the Prime Directive despite your gut reaction telling you to do something different. And what Greg Pak has been doing is the same thing, only with Superman and these monsters, and it's been really fun to see it play out. It's been kind of a quaint little story because it is just kind of monsters in the underground, and nothing too fancy, but it's the challenge, it's the mental challenge that he's giving the Man of Steel that's making this book a lot of fun to read. And plus, you throw in some good humor in there, you throw in some fun artwork from Aaron Kuder, and you've got a fantastic book. So if you haven't been picking up Action Comics, if you were like me and you dropped it way back with issue 7 or 8 because Grant Morrison was just bending your mind too much, this might be a good place for you to hop on. If you're not a huge Man of Steel fan, Man of Steel the movie, this is maybe definitely the place for you to hop on, because this is not that, and it feels good to see something that's a bit more true to the classic idea of the Man of Steel. So that just leaves the big final question: what was the best book of the week? And let's face it, this book is probably the best book every single week that it comes out, and that is Earth 2. We're on issue 21 now, and James Robinson has been gone for 6 months, probably. I think close to 6 months. Maybe this is Tom Taylor's 5th issue, not his 6th issue. But either way, Robinson's been gone for a long time, and I was really, really nervous about him leaving, and just leaving it where he did, with so many loose ends to be tied up. What's going to happen when they bring in someone else to do it? And I think DC took someone who, rather than someone that would just maybe play out what James Robinson would have done, and I'm not even saying maybe he is to some degree playing out what James Robinson was planning on doing, but at the same time, he's not someone who's just there to wrap up loose ends that James Robinson left. He's there to really take whatever situation that has already been started and just run with it. And he's been throwing us some crazy issues with the Man of Steel, who is now an agent of Darkseid, or maybe he's not an agent of Darkseid, but he's clearly cut from Darkseid's cloth. He's out to take over the world for himself, and he is doing some horrendous stuff in this book. He rips off the arm of the Atom and beats him with it, literally. He just pulls his arm right out of its socket and just starts kicking the crap out of him. He commits basically genocide for these people who are trying to escape the planet in this giant sort of space arc, and you see people just falling from the skies, and Superman basically says, hey, this is our opportunity to teach everyone a lesson, and give them a point to remember next time they try and escape the planet, kind of a thing. Really, really intimidating stuff from Superman. It's fun in this issue to see some of the details of this Earth 2, and what is a world what does a regular world look like after, you know, you've had these superheroes and then you've had Darkseid come and attack and everyone has ended up dead and humanity is kind of left to fend for themselves. What's their next step? And we actually get to see that in Earth 2 indirectly because we're seeing the after effects of it, but you know, the idea that they've created these huge underground bunkers that all lead into this giant spaceship for everyone to escape on, and that they have all these backup plans with, you know, their secret army and the world army and all this kind of stuff, feels very real. You know, I mean, obviously it's set in the DC universe, and so you have things like, you know, their secret army base being on Paradise Island or Amazonia or whatever it is that they call it on Earth 2. You know, obviously that stuff's a bit more far-fetched, but at the same time, you can kind of... He does a good job of creating an Earth that has been ravaged by this war and how people would react to that in the long term, and you get to see the effects of that, particularly in this issue with the space arc. So as things are ramping up, I'm excited to continue with Earth 2. This book just is always fantastic, always raises more questions that it can answer. I'm ready to see Lois Lane kick some butt as Red Tornado, and excited to see where this new Kryptonian is going to lead us in our ongoing adventures on Earth 2. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. I'm tempted to go pick up the First Contact storyline and see kind of how that's going to tie into all of this. And I'm really curious to see what's going to happen when, you know, our Earth Prime collides with Earth 2, and what's that going to look like, and will Superman still be around? Will this Earth 2 Superman still be around when that happens, and maybe he'll take over Earth Prime as well? We'll have to see. Great stuff from Tom Taylor. If you haven't picked up Earth 2 before, just go back, get started from the beginning. James Robinson kind of had a slow start, I think, was people's big complaint. I think I complained about that as well. As I read it all, and I reread the whole thing relatively recently, and reading it as a whole, James Robinson's run felt a lot more cohesive than maybe it did issue to issue. But Tom Taylor is just taking it to a whole nother place, taking all the world building that James Robinson did and said, I am just going to blow this whole thing up and see where all the pieces land. So pick up Earth 2. I absolutely recommend it. Also be sure to pick up Revival, Auteur, Green Arrow, Action Comics, all the good books out this week. Plenty of them. Have a great Wednestopia, everyone, and I'll see you all very soon.